So, what if the world's most famous award for peace was given to someone accused of calling for war? This isn't a trick question. It's the paradox right at the heart of the controversy over the 2025 Nobel laureate, Venezuelan opposition leader María Corina Machado. This year, the prize has absolutely ignited a global firestorm, and we're going to get right into why.
And wow, the criticism was immediate and it was sharp. These words from Professor Biljana Vankovska, they really nail the core argument, right? That the prize has just lost its way, becoming more of a political tool than a genuine honor for peacemakers. And look, we're not talking about a small squabble here. For a lot of people, this is a huge deal. It's a challenge to the entire legitimacy of the prize itself.
And that really gets us to the heart of it, the central contradiction. So on one hand, you have the Nobel Committee honoring someone they see as a champion for democracy. But on the other hand, her critics are pointing to a record that they say is filled with calls for military intervention and support for really harsh economic sanctions. It's just a total clash of stories, and it's got the whole world asking, what exactly is being celebrated here?
All right, so to unpack all of this, here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll ask, is this prize about peace or is it about politics? Then we'll meet the 2025 laureate herself. After that, we'll get into the backlash. And believe me, there's a lot of it. We'll look at the history of controversy surrounding this prize, explore some of its unintended consequences. Yeah, there's a dark side. And finally, we'll try to figure out if this is all about redefining what peace even means.
You know, it's kind of funny. Alfred Nobel created this prize to celebrate people who end conflicts, but it has this long history of actually starting them. This year's award to María Corina Machado, it's not just another page in that book, it might be one of the most explosive chapters we've ever seen. Okay, so who is the person at the very center of this storm? Let's dive in and meet María Corina Machado. We need to understand why, out of hundreds of nominees, the Nobel Committee chose her. Well, if you look at the official announcement, the picture they paint is pretty clear. The Nobel Committee calls her a brave and committed champion of peace, a key unifying figure. Basically, in their story, she's the one keeping the flame of democracy burning in Venezuela. She's presented as the symbol of peaceful resistance against what they call a brutal authoritarian state. So people call her Venezuela's Iron Lady. Her background is actually in industrial engineering before she jumped into politics, and what a jump it was. She got elected to the National Assembly back in 2010 with a record-breaking number of votes. She even famously went head-to-head with President Hugo Chavez right there in Parliament. And get this, even though she's been banned from holding office, her support is just massive. I mean, she won the opposition's primary with over 90% of the vote. That's huge.
Right, so the announcement was made and bam! The backlash was almost instantaneous. Critics from all over the world started saying, wait a minute, her record is anything but peaceful. So let's take a look at the case they're making.
And, well, Machado herself might have thrown some fuel on that fire. Almost immediately after winning, she dedicated the prize not just to the people of Venezuela, but also to former U.S. President Donald Trump. She thanked him for his decisive support. For her critics, this wasn't just some awkward mistake. No, this was proof. It was confirmation of their biggest fear, that this was all about foreign influence.
And this really shows you the two completely different worlds we're talking about here. On one side, the Nobel Committee is saying champion of peace. But on the other side, you've got critics from all over, social movements, political leaders, and they're calling it a betrayal. They're using words like instrument of modern colonialism and calling the whole thing outrageous and shameful. I mean, you just can't get more opposite than that.
So what's the actual case against her? Well, it rests on a few key things. Critics point to her involvement in the 2002 coup attempt against Hugo Chavez. They point to her public support for sweeping U.S. sanctions that many say have made the humanitarian crisis in Venezuela way worse. And then there are her calls for foreign military intervention. On top of all that, you have her close ties to people like Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and various far-right leaders in Europe.
Yeah, that alignment with Israel is a really big deal for a lot of people. When she came out and said, the struggle of Venezuela is the struggle of Israel, that drew a ton of criticism. And you have to remember the timing here. Making a statement like that, with everything that's been happening in Gaza, just made it that much more explosive.
And for a lot of her critics, that context is everything. They look at this number, over 250 journalists killed while covering the conflict in Gaza, and they see a different kind of bravery. So they're asking a pretty tough question. If this prize is really about courage in the face of violence, then why are these journalists being completely overlooked?
So you might be wondering, is this year just a weird one-off? To figure that out, we really have to look at the history of the prize. Because the truth is, the Nobel Peace Prize and controversy, they kind of go way back. It's always been political, in a lot of ways. Let's go all the way back to the beginning. Alfred Nobel's will was actually super specific about what this prize was for. He was focused on peace between countries, friendship between nations, getting rid of armies, and holding peace conferences. It was a really clear and honestly, compared to today, a very narrow set of rules. But over the years, the committee has, they've stretched that definition a lot. Now peace work can mean anything from human rights and promoting democracy inside a country to stuff like economic development or even fighting climate change. The prize today covers so much more than Nobel ever imagined. And because they've expanded the mission so much, you get this pattern of really political awards. I mean, think about it. 1973, Henry Kissinger gets the prize while the Vietnam War is still raging. 2009, Barack Obama gets it less than a year into his presidency while the U.S. is involved in 2 wars. Or 2019, Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed wins for making peace, and then a year later starts a horrific civil war. So when you look at it that way, Machado's award doesn't seem like an outlier at all. It fits right into this pattern of controversial, almost hopeful picks. All this history, it makes you ask a really tough question. Could the Nobel Peace Prize actually do more harm than good? It sounds crazy, but there's a lot of research suggesting that sometimes, especially when you give it to a dissident, the prize can have some really dangerous, unexpected results.
Yeah, political scientists even have a name for it, the perverse consequences theory. And it's pretty simple, really. Step 1, a dissident in some authoritarian country wins the Nobel. Step 2, that country's government doesn't see it as an honor. They see it as a foreign attack, as interference. So, step 3, how do they react? They don't back down. They crack down. They get even tougher on the dissidents and their entire movement.
And as political scientist Ronald Krebs puts it, the prize can end up bringing the heavy hand of the state down on dissidents. It actually hurts the very cause it was trying to help. It's a pretty sobering thought, isn't it? That the world's biggest prize for peace could accidentally end up causing more conflict.
So, where do we go from here? If we step back from this one controversy, what does the modern Nobel Peace Prize really tell us about how we even think about peace in the world today?
This chart really spells out the change. Just look at this. Since the 70s, a full 20%, that's 1/5 of all the prizes, have been given to people trying to create political change inside their own countries. That's a huge shift from what Nobel wanted, which was peace between countries. It just shows how much the prize has gotten mixed up in the politics of intervention. And at the end of the day, that's the real change right there. The prize used to be about rewarding something that was already done, a lifetime of making peace. But now it's more of an aspirational tool. The committee uses it to send a message, to pick a side, to try and influence what happens next. It's not just about honoring the past anymore. It's about trying to shape the future.
Which brings us to one last really big question. In a world with so much conflict, what is the Nobel Peace Prize today? Is it still a real tool for peace, or has it just become a political weapon? Or maybe it's just a reflection of how desperate we all are for some good news. The answer, I think, is probably as complicated as the idea of peace itself.